Hello there, this is David here again with another video. It's not been too long since my previous one, thanks to the people who liked it and subscribed and all the rest of that. Appreciate it a lot. Some good constructive feedback as well, which is very nice and very helpful, so thank you very much. I thought today I would go through the most recent project I did and completed, which was an entry into a remix competition for the track Save Me from Gareth Emery and Christina Novelli. It didn't win, unfortunately, which is great shame for me. Not really. It was good practice. It's a good track, lovely track to work with, interesting track to work with. Technically, it's my most challenging and also most interesting and complex track that I've worked with. This is it in its entirety. So what I'll do is, I think I will play it, and we'll go from there. Disclaimer, around this area we have a lot of things going on that will destroy my CPU. So you will hear, because I haven't bounced these things down, you will hear a whole lot of weird clicking and all the rest of it. Not as much as I will hear, because of the way I've got it set up to record and all the rest of it. It will absolutely destroy my hearing, but it should just have relatively minor clipping on the recorded video, hopefully. Also, a second disclaimer, in order to try and minimize that level of clipping, and because I really just don't feel like bouncing everything down, I've set my audio interface latency as high as it can possibly. That means that I'm recording all of this and I've got headphones on, and so I hear my voice. The problem with that is that I hear my voice about a third to a half a second after I say something. So the feedback that I get is very off-putting. So if I sound a little bit strange or confused or a little slow, it's not because I'm having a bad day. It's probably because of that. So with that having been said, I will press play and we'll play the track through. I'll probably just cut it off there. And then we'll go through the individual bits, just touch on them lightly, show you what I did, etc. So here we go. So that's it, really. I had to turn off at the end there. I had to turn off the massive synth in one of the pad layers because it was chunking far too much. So I'm just gonna head back now that it's off so we can hear how that sounds without clicking, or at least with significantly less clicking. You'll notice the key change there. And there you go. So that is the track. It's not mastered because, well, it's not mastered. You don't master at the same time as you're producing, so that's is an unmastered version. I do have a setup that, if I enable this, it's a little bit of a mess, but I have a setup where I try to minimize the amount of changes that I make to levels on individual tracks in the mixer. But if I feel that I need to do automation on some levels or something like that, I'll stick a little mix tool in at the end of the signal chain there. That way, if I want to adjust the volume, I'm adjusting the volume sort of globally in one way. And the automation happens here. I could invert that, and that might make more sense, actually, now that I think of it. But it's just the way that I did it at the time, so that's why you'll see a lot of mix tools there, because there's either some automation, or I just wanted to lower it and I didn't want to go into the mixer or adjust the mixer levels for whatever reason. However, all of these things feed into various buses. So there's a drums bus, there's a snare rolls bus, there's a synth lead bus, there's a random synth bus, of course. There's pads, there's a bassline bus, there's an FX bus, there's a vocals bus, there's also a sends bus for all the sends. There's a piano bus as well. So everything goes via a bus. And that's where the majority of my, let's make this a certain level, if you will. That's where that is. There's also plenty processing that happens on all of these buses. Possibly a bit too much, but you know, it is how it is. The reason I've got this open on the left here is so that I can swap out between automation lanes and no automation lanes. for now, if I have automation lanes open, you'll see my various bus automations, which are in their own folder. That's not quite irrelevant, and I tend to just hide that away when I don't need it. That way you can see the structure of the track a little bit better. So in terms of track structure, it's pretty much a standard 138. It's 137 BPM, but it's the standard trance, melodic trance. Not quite uplifting trance, but it's melodic trance with elements of uplifting and elements of, I don't know what the best way to describe it is, but it's meant to be a little bit driving, it's meant to be a little bit melodic, it's meant to be emotional, it's meant to be potent. So that's what I tried to make it. But it follows the standard sort of structure. I don't really do radio edits. I probably would. If it was required, maybe I should. I don't know. But it's the standard sort of track length. It's about 8 minutes long. About a minute of that is a pure intro, which is just, there you go, almost exactly a minute actually, is pure intro, where it's just teasing things like a bassline introduction, some little simple synth type things going on there, and bringing in the various percussion elements. Then there's about, I don't know, a minute and a half, give or take, of verses and vocals and stuff where everything is there. I mean, that's all a build up to this breakdown. And then about 4 minutes into the song, we crash into the epic part, which lasts about 2 minutes. And then it winds down for another minute and a half-ish. So it's a standard type of template, if you will. It's very, very common. It's good. The reasons are well known to producers out there. It's so that DJs can mix your track together nicely at the beginning and at the end. There's not any sort of sudden stops, and that's a good thing. That means that the bulk of the playtime of your song is going to be about 5 to 6 minutes, and that's a nice length. It's longer than what you would hear on a radio, but it's nice for festivals and concerts and whatnot. So yeah, structure aside, it's pretty standard. I've got my usual affinity for coloring things. Green for percussion, red for synths, orange for pads, blue for bass, purple for effects. I put my vocals in a sort of a light blue. Little sub-synths, as I call them, are in a different color from the leads, just so that I can differentiate them. Basically, if it goes to a different bus, there are some exceptions, but if it goes to a different bus, it's a different color. This big riff is a different color because it's a special thing. I wanted to treat it separately. Snare rolls go to a different bus than the rest of the percussion. So my rule is not entirely true, but yeah. And just those are effects and those are effects too. So I just wanted to keep them separate, and it breaks it down and it looks nice and it's easy to spot where everything is. Find the bass lines. Oh, there they are. Find the big riff. Oh, there it is. You know, find the hi-hats. Oh, crap. There. Yeah. So you get the idea. So let's go through the track very sort of loosely. I'll start with the percussion. Percussion is extremely simple. In order to do this soloing and all the rest of it, I'm going to need to remember to solo my voice. Otherwise, you're just going to hear silence. So let's try and remember to do that. It'll be very embarrassing if I don't. All right, so let's solo the percussion. So percussion is very simple. There's nothing fancy going on in here. Most of the time I start with a sort of a high-passed kick, which ends up becoming not so high-passed. Very straightforward. I didn't want to clutter it with complex hi-hat melodies. I'll just skip forward here a tiny bit. I just found that worked nicely. There's also a loop that I've got there, which serves as... I don't often use loops, especially not just plopped in. Of course, this has been quite heavily EQ'd and all the rest of it. I literally just wanted the... It has a quality of binding the sound together because it's already been built. And so if you listen to it, my hats are effectively emphasizing it a little bit. And that's it. That's all it needs to be. There's no shame in doing that. I could have assembled it all myself, but I don't need to. And there's no artistry in assembling all that. There's talent in making things sound nice, I agree. But I'm making it sound nice by using something that already exists. Having said that, you'll see through this production and most of my other productions, there is very little reliance on loops at all. So, because I'm a staunch believer in creating things for yourself. There's also a snare build up here, which I'll get to in a sec. Over here. This has an effect, and I partly used it for the effect, and I partly used it for the snare roll. It comes from the drum loop, the hats loop comes from a Thrill Seekers pack from Freshly Squeezed Samples. Studio Essentials, I think it is, version 1, yep. And the snare roll here comes from Dave Parkinson Trance Essentials. And of course, just like the hats loop, I've EQ'd it to death. But I quite liked the effect that was in the background. So that's pretty much that. And then if I so that, then I actually took the notes that were in the snare roll and I recreated them. So I would have a complete snare roll. And of course there's a little filter effect on top of that, and that's completely separate. So yes, there's a little snare roll there, some basic ride cymbals, nothing fancy there. Open hats 2, basic clap, basic crashes, and all. It's just very, very simple. So the drums are not intensely complex or anything like that. They're fairly straightforward, and they do the job. On the kick, I've got a lot of stuff. Probably the highlight. Let me actually enable that. Probably the highlight here is the R bass. Just makes just makes it sound slightly more oomphy, gives it a bit more presence. Transient master, just so that the clarity of the kick comes through. I tried EQing that in a little bit, but it never quite worked out right, so I just used transient master, which does the job. So yeah, that's the percussion. The bass lines, they also start quite high passed. So obviously you can hear what's going on there. It's a very straightforward rolling bass line. I put shaping on these individually so that I could control them. I say on all of them. This one hasn't got any, but it doesn't need any. And this one doesn't need any either because it's completely off the... It's offbeat is the term I was looking for. So the first bass line is a zebra, just a preset, I believe. And it sounds like this. And unshaped, it sounds like this. So that's why we shape things. Obviously, when the kick is happening, that's when the shaping is happening. So that at that moment, whilst the kick is playing, it doesn't get in any way drowned or interfered with by the bass line. You want the two to come through independently, of course. The reason I sidechained these sort of mid-bassy or upper mid-bassy is because the kick isn't only low frequencies, it's also high frequencies. And I didn't want that to be interfered with at all, so I pretty much sidechained that completely. Bassline 2 is much the same story. So you can see it's been EQ'd to death. And it also has shaping. Without the shaping, it sounds like this. Which is not bad. I'm an idiot. It has been EQ'd to death, although not as much as the other one. I had the wrong thing selected, so that's silly. So as you can see, the shape profile is different here. So let me turn that off. Oh shit. Very basic, just rolling bass line setup there. Bassline 3 sounds a bit like this. This is, so bassline 2 was also a zebra preset. Bassline 3 is a Sylenth preset, of course. This has an arpeggiator built in, so most synths do, but I mean this particular patch has an arpeggiator already. I just took advantage of that. On its own, obviously there's nothing. So I just took advantage of that. It's quite nice and it works. It's been EQ'd. It's been shaped. Without the shaping, it sounds like this. So that's fine. There's a high bass here. The high bass is a persistent high bass. I'm still not 100% sold on it, but without it, it just sounded a little bit empty and I wasn't sure what to put in, so I just kept it. It's a Sylenth again, just another little gated preset. My stomach just rumbled, that was professional. EQ'd, taking a little bit of the high end out there just because it would interfere. But yeah, very simple. One note, just hold the note. And then of course, the good old sub bass. Sub bass is very simple. And that is, before my Serum sub bass, I used a different sub, which was a little bit less reliable, but it worked, mostly. So altogether, I said that wasn't shaped at all. It was compressed a little bit. It was EQ just to cut off the very lower end. Didn't need to EQ the top because it's filtered. Anyway, so altogether now. And you know what? Just for the kicks, I will do this as well. So that high bassline thing sort of just fits in with the hats. That was the idea, at least, to just merge those sounds together quite nicely. So when there are hats playing, you can hear it, but it's very much in the background. But when you hear it on its own, it maybe sounds like it's a bit too loud. And then of course we have a little filter down type situation there as we go into things further on. Cool. So let's drop that down a bit. So that's our bass lines. We've got several effects here, which I will go into later. Same thing with the vocals. Let's go through these little sub type things. So a lot of this came from the original remix pack that was given to me as part of the competition. A couple of things I've taken some liberties with, or tweaked and recreated, or but the majority of it is inspired by it, at the very least, or a direct use of the sample provided. So that comes from the original track. That I believe is just completely mine. That has got some reverb shaping on it. A little leading pluck type sound. All of that shaped. And then an acid also shaped. So I'll go through those. We'll get to the big riff in a bit. So verse plucks is... where is that? Oh, that's over here. So verse plucks sounds like this. This was part of the original pack as well. I have done my fair share of messing around with it. That's the original. So I just changed it so that it was fitted in the mix a little bit better and lasted a bit longer. So that's verse plucks. That sits in the background when the vocals kick in. You probably heard it. Spire intro pluck. I originally tried to recreate this with Spire and then just used the original because it just worked better. This has also been tweaked by me. So that's that. That just repeats a couple of times. Acid stab, well, it's not even an acid really. It's a little acidy. then that's heavily shaped. So that just provides some sort of body in the background. Plux 1 sounds like this. And is intended to work with acid stab 1. And it just goes on a sort of automation, oh god, it goes on a little automation journey up and down a couple of times. I'm still trying to work out what the best way to do automation is in Studio One, but we'll get to that. Yeah, so that's that. Then there's the acid. I'll play the acid for a little bit so you can hear how interesting it sounds. I just want to adjust the microphone quickly. Okay, there we go. So yeah, the acid is acidy. It's just a preset used from one of the freshly squeezed samples. I get a lot of my stuff from there. In fact, I get pretty much all of my stuff from there. It's Sean Tice and Darren Porter Spire, Silent Essentials or something like that. Very, very nice. I have tweeted a little bit, and there's some liberal processing going on, but it provides a good backing as well. So altogether, it just fills in some blanks and sounds very nice. Pads. We're approaching that pad section. So let's go to the pad section. Actually, let's not go to the pad section, not just yet. We'll cover the leads very quickly at this point because there is a little bit of a lead build-up here where I just introduce sounds that will be used, or at least some of them. So whilst everything is playing, then all of a sudden so that just comes in the background, and again, is just supporting. So of course, there's bass line happening at the same time, there's drums happening, and there's actually vocals happening as well, which we'll get to shortly. There's also environmental vocals, or what I've cunningly called distance vocals filter here, which is underneath super delayed tonight. Anyway, so that just acts as a bit of a filler, but it is the same sounds, albeit filtered, that are used in the main leads later on, or at least two of them. So here we have our pads. Now we've got a string section which is literally part of the East-West collection, and it's literally some strings, just a string section recorded and sampled and all that, and it starts playing at this point, and it's just very straightforward. You probably won't even hear it at this point because it's filtered. Oh, there we go, that's coming. The side chaining is happening on the pad bus at this point. So nothing too fancy there. It's just a very Simple little sound just to have in the background as we build up. Then I'm going to enable this. I know that's dangerous, but we'll enable that. Then we've got this string section, which now starts actually really showing itself. And then it trashes the performance. So on its own, this is very similar to... I'm going to just turn that off now because it's not necessary to have it. This is very similar to my previous videos mention of the layered pad, where I had 5 things in here, including a synth master, and it's the same thing just without the synth master. This track was created before I did that. And so this is a CPU hog of epic proportions. So that's why I have to turn the massive off just for demoing. It doesn't destroy the sound too much because this just adds a little bit to it. It's probably not worth the CPU hit, especially for demo purposes. So I'll keep it off. So yeah, that's pretty much it. There's some filtering happening on that. Pad's left hand layer is exactly what it sounds like. It's a layer of pads for the left hand. It's basically one note, but just the left hand version of that in a separate set of less CPU intensive but still pretty intensive synths. Sub pad is a sub pad. There's also an air pad here. And that is this. It's the first time I've used it. It's very interesting. Got this for £1. I'd say it's worth it. It's very flexible. I like it. So yeah, there's that. And then there's also, this is a rendering because of Virus doing strange things. Then there's a Virus pad also on this. And that's just because the Virus is so nice. And I just wanted a little hint of Virus sound in the pads. So here it is. So altogether, of course, without the massive in there, it sounds like this. I wasn't going full, or going for incredible fullness in these pads. I wanted it to be a little bit thinner at this point, so that when the sub pad came in, it just sounded great, but I didn't want to knock away the impact of the vocals. So this is probably my favorite part. So yeah, that's the pads really. Keeping it simple. So let's clear that out. Moving on to vocals. Christina's voice is very distinct. When I hear a track that has her as a vocalist, I almost always am able to say, that's Christina Novelli, isn't it? And yes, it usually is. So the stems provided in the remix pack were very, very good, and I really enjoyed working with them. That said, I did do a little bit of stuff on them, nothing too crazy. As you can see, I didn't even EQ on this particular thing, although there is some EQing on the vocal bus that it gets sent to. So, I mean, this is what it sounds like without any processing. That's not what it sounds like without any processing.
Hide behind these four walls.
There's possibly some processing happening here.
Crumble down. The time to fight who we are. Nowhere to run from ourselves.
Okay, but
hide behind these four walls.
so I pushed the vocals a little bit. I would lie, there's EQing happening right there. I'm very silly. So you can see some red happening there, and that's usually a bad thing, and it is. But I was trying to just push the vocals a little bit, so I was okay with that. These things came as part of the vocals and are in the original track, and I just spaced them out, gave them lots of reverb, some delay, and just had them as a sort of an effect in the background.
So is this my last breath?
Speaking of which, at the beginning of the track I include this as a little background introduction to the vocals to come, but also as a little melodic element, just to put the bass line in. So as you can see, it's in harmony with that, and it just sounds very nice.
Ready to fight.
And it also works well when it's put together with any of the vocals, including the chorus.
Follow the flame into the
Of course, at this point, there's a key change. And so everything has changed key now, so I can't continue it. And in fact, I don't think I can ever use it again. No, I cannot, because it's not in the same key. So, and there's actually several challenges in this track because of that. The construction of the intro and the construction of the outro is quite different because there's different keys.
So who will save me? Save me.
So the vocals have got some fairly heavy effects on them, but in trance tracks that's usually okay and actually works quite nicely because it generally makes them stand out and also last long. They don't sound dry. Like that long delay there just fits in nicely with what's actually happening in the track, in the background, effectively, the background music. So that's the vocals, very briefly covered. They're good vocals. Without them, the song wouldn't be any good. Lastly, we'll come to the synths, and then the big riff, and then we'll wrap it up, I guess. So at the point here where the pads are now fading out, I'm going to enable the vocals because that's quite important. So we got some leads over here. I'll play them all together at first and then we'll dissect them. So we've got 3 sets of leads here. The lead melody itself is not particularly complicated. It starts on an upper note. It's G, so there we go. But yeah, it's not a particularly complicated melody. It's quite different from anything that the original suggests. But the original is not even in really the same genre. It's more, I don't know, progressive house, EDM, something. Not really sure exactly how it would be classified. I classify things differently to how, I guess, other people do. But yeah, so it's a little bit non-standard for what the original source material was, but it's fairly standard, or a very common rhythm that you'd find in the kind of music that I would produce. So I'll play lead 2 first. Lead 2 sounds like this. Of course, there's a filter up at this point. Lead 4 sounds like this. Yeah. For some reason that didn't do the automation very well. Let me try that again. So, let's just view that, and let's just view that. For some reason, that automation was just not working very well. I don't know why. It shouldn't be. There's no reason for that. Okay, it was. Sorry, I misinterpreted how that was supposed to sound. Excuse me. So there's that. The 2 of these are meant to provide sort of like the main body of the pluck, and to retain that sort of plucky sound. So at this point, they together sound like this. With that providing bulk of the saw type sound, and that providing the actual pluck. However, there's also lead 1, which comes in sort of halfway through and sounds like this. Now, I discovered that when playing the 3 together, it sounded nice, but, and especially at this point here, which we'll get to in a second, it sounded like it was a little bit flat, like there was something missing. There wasn't dimension to it like I wanted. I know it sounds like I'm just making up these terms, but you'll hear the difference when I enable supporting pluck. So before I enable supporting pluck, or before I do that, I'm going to show you what supporting pluck sounds like. Sounds like this. Sounds familiar, right? Cool. So now you know what that sort of sounds like. And I'll play this, and then I will play it with supporting pluck, and you'll hear the big difference. I'll start the supporting pluck around about there. Can you hear it? Not only does it give it a little bit more body to the actual pluck itself, but the reason it works like that is because all of these plucks contain 3 notes effectively. At any point in time, there's a range of 3 notes. But, sorry, just to clarify that, there's a range of 3 notes, but with a gap. There's a gap on every second grouping. So there's a note, there's a gap, there's a note, there's a note, there's a gap, there's a note, there's a note, there's a gap, there's a note, there's a note, there's a gap, etc., etc., etc. One on the supporting pluck, there's 4 notes and there is no gap. But it would sound like too much of a mess if everything used that. So it's just this little sound that's coming through, along with the fact that it sounds quite plucky anyway, that just makes it sound, in my opinion, really, really good. You can hear it at this point especially. And also through the middle there. So yes, there's that. Then, last but not least, or almost, we've got some effects to go through, but those are very simple. Big Riff. Big Riff came from the preset, not the preset, the stems pack that came with the remix, and it sounded very much like this. Obviously, I've sped it up. I like that, and I wanted to incorporate that, but because of the key change that happens in this track, I couldn't use it earlier. I had to use it later on. So I put it in, and it just fitted, completely accidentally, it just fitted with the lead melody that I had created. It's not really an accident because it's using the same, it's in the same key for a start, it's using the same basic chords, but just rhythmically it just worked. I'll give you an example. So yeah, that's playing then in the background. There's a little respite in the climax where the chorus vocals repeat themselves, and that's playing at that point and gets retained just so that it's there as well, because it also gets used a little bit later, and that's where it gets used later. And I then chop it down into various little parts just so that it forms part of the outro, and it actually works quite nicely. This was sort of just a trial and error thing, and I just found that it worked really nicely. Just repeating it, it was perfectly made to be repeatable like this without me even realizing it. Of course, I've put effects on it. that little end bit over there works so nicely with what's going on in the background here. So yes, that's big riff, and then that fades out. This is unnecessary, it's already inaudible by this point. But I just kept it there because it didn't hurt. So lastly, because this is now an hour long, whoops, we've got some effects, things that I use. These all come, with the exception of my old faithful reverb kick. Gotta love the reverb kick. These all come from probably the Dave Parkinson Trance Essentials, and I'm not sure what the Max Bryman Trance Essentials, of course, also from Freshly Squeezed. This is like a giant product placement for them, but they're really good. So yeah, just some very straightforward white noisy type things. Many of these I could probably get from a synth, but they're just a little bit nicer. For example, there's some editing and shaping and all the rest of it done to them, but it's just does the job for me. So there's that. I've also got some effects, which are sort of ambient effects, which I just threw in. Some of this came from the stems as well. In fact, all of it came from the stems, except for this, which came from Max Bryman. I'll play that on its own. Very subtle, but subtle is good. And that is the track. So broken down very tragically into tiny, tiny little pieces. And yeah, let us... Oh, one thing I did forget, of course. How could I have forgotten this? It's sacrilege. Is the piano, which... And my companion, the fluffy black and white cat, has just entered the room and is now tearing up the carpet. So that's always good. Hey, stop it. There we go. Okay, so... Yeah. So piano, which doesn't sound amazing, but that's probably because the reverb bus is soloed or something like that. No, it's not. It's just fine, actually. That's how it's supposed to be. I try and squeeze a piano in everything. Sort of what I do. But that just provides a little filler for this part where there's no vocals in between the two verses. And then right at the end. And that just leads into the breakdown. So, all in, it's a pretty good track. Could you stop licking yourself? Thank you. Ugh, cats. Anyway, this is the track. This is Gareth Emery featuring Christina Novelli, Save Me. It's the David Warner remix. It's unofficial. It's on SoundCloud. It's unmastered in here, but yeah, mastering is not my strength, I will be honest, so I do need to improve on that a little bit. The version on SoundCloud is better. It's not amazing, but it's better. But yeah, that's it. So that's the track. I thank you very much for watching and for going through this with me and putting up with me. And I will just play this ending little bit again because I just love it so much. I really enjoyed doing this track. It was a technical challenge for me. There's key changes in there which I've never done before. It's the most complex track I've done. It's also the best vocals I've worked with. And I just tried to make it as nice as I possibly could. And I think I succeeded. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Please feel free to like and subscribe and all the rest of it. And yes, hopefully we'll have another video at some point in the near future. I'm contemplating whether I should make a track and then do little updates as I'm making it. So yes, thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.